Morning, sixth graders. We're going to talk about powers and exponents this morning, which might be something new for you. We're also going to be working on a bunch of example problems, so please get ready to go. Take a look at pages 10 and 11 while we're doing this. So, what in the world are powers and exponents and those such things? Let me show you an example right here on this board. If I wrote on the board the following phrase, we would call this 6 to the third power. Everybody say 6 to the third power. And what that means in mathematics is that we can think of it as being 6 times 6 times 6, which if you do the multiplication is the number 216. Notice what happens here. This big number at the bottom is called the base, and this number is called the exponent. The whole thing is called a power. So if I were to write 2 to the fourth power, everybody say 2 to the fourth power. 2 to the fourth power does not mean the number 8. It means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Notice I write 4 different 2's because of the exponent. And the answer to this is 16, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Let's try it with the number 1, 1 to the third power. 1 to the third power is really 1 times 1 times 1, which is still the number 1, because 1 times 1 is 1, and then 1 times the remaining 1 is 1. What about something like this? How about 3 to the second power? That would be 3 times 3, because the exponent tells us to write the 3 twice, and 3 times 3 is 9. This is our exponent. This number is our base. The whole thing is called the power. Exponent, base, the whole thing is called the power. And 3 to the second power is 9. 1 to the third power is 1. 2 to the fourth power is 16. And 6 to the third power is 216. Let's try another one. What about something like, say, 5 to the second power? 5 to the second power means 5 times 5, or 25. Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this. Okay. What about something like, let's do 4 to the third power. 4 to the third power means 4 times 4 times 4, which is 16 times 4, 16 times 4, which is 64. How are we doing? Hopefully we got that figured out. Okay. These problems that I wrote on the board are actually in your textbook on the bottom of page 11. The directions for 5, 6, and 7 say to write each power as a product of the same factor. Write each power as the product of the same factor. So all they're asking you to do here is to write number 5, 6 to the second power, as the product of the same factor. Product means multiplication, so I write it as 6 times 6. This one, problem 6, they want me to write it like this. Notice, 4 to the fifth power. So I write the 4 5 different times. They're not asking for the answer yet. They're just asking me to write it as the product of the same power. This one right here, we're going to write it as 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, because that's what the directions tell us to do there. The directions say write each power as a product of the same factor. So it's 8 times, can you see that? Yes, I guess you can. 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. Okay. Let's go down here. The directions are different for 8, 9, and 10. Here they say to evaluate. And when they say evaluate, what they really mean is find the answer. So this is going to be a little bit different than up here. So 3 to the fourth power. I write 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. That's the first part, but now I got to figure out what that equals. 3 times 3 is 9. Times 3 more is 27. Times 3 more is 81. So the answer this time is 81, because I figure out what those equal when they multiply together. How about this one? Let's put a line here, separate. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. Oh boy, that's a lot of 5s, isn't it? 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. 125 times the next 5 is 625. And 620, whoops, I'm off the screen, aren't I? And 625 times that last 5, oh boy, That's a hard one. That's 3,125. If you don't believe me, go ahead and work it out on paper, but it is 3,125. Okay, what about this last one? It's actually a pretty easy one. 10 times 10 times 10. 10 times 10 is 100, times the last 10 is 1,000. 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 more is 1,000. Okay? Down here, number 11, the directions change a little bit. The directions say write each product in exponential form. When they say write it in exponential form, they mean write it so that it has a base and one of those exponents, like 6 to the second power or 5 to the third power, something like that. So we have this right here. I'm going to write it as 5 to the 6th power. Write this expression in exponential form means write it as 5 to the 6th power. Why did I write a 6 here? Because there's 6 5s. Why did I write a 5 here as the base? Because 5 is the number that's being multiplied. Look at number 12. What's this one going to be? That's 1 to the 4th power. Because there's 4 1s written there, and the base is 1. This last one says evaluate 11 to the 3rd. Oops, you can't see it. You can't see it. It says evaluate 11 to the 3rd power. Evaluate 11 to the 3rd power. In other words, evaluate this. What is that? Remember, evaluate means find the answer. So we're going to take 11 times 11 times 11. That's a toughie. Well, I know that 11 times 11 is 121. And 121 times 11 is 1,331. So that's our answer. Now, you might have to do some figuring by using multiplication of 2-digit times 3-digit numbers or 2-digit times 2-digit numbers, but that's the answer to that. How are we doing? Hopefully we're understanding this so far. I'm going to go on to page 12 a little bit and do a few of the problems that are there. We're going to start with number 14. And with problem 14, they give us this, and they say write it as the product of the same factor. Write it as the product of the same factor. What they really mean for 14 is just do this. Boink, 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 and boink. Done. That's all they want for 14. 14, the directions do not say to evaluate. You don't have to evaluate. You're just writing as the product of expressions. Let's try number 16. 16 says 3 to the 8th power. Again, we don't have to solve it. We don't have to evaluate it. The directions say write it as the product of the same factor. So I'm going to write a bunch of 3's. How many 3's am I going to write? Well, it's going to end up being 8 of them. Why 8? Because the exponent's 8. Right? Let's go on to number 20. 20 says evaluate. Uh-oh. 20 says evaluate, and 20 says 2 to the 3rd power. So how do I do that? Well, first I'm going to write it like this. Because it's 2 to the 3rd power, I write the number 2 3 times, and then I'm going to multiply those together. So this time I do have to do the solving of it. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times the last 2 is 8. That one's pretty easy, isn't it? 2 to the 3rd power is the same thing as the number 8. Let's try number 22. 22 says 4 to the 3rd power. Again, we write 4 times 4 times 4 because it's 4 to the 3rd power. 3 different 4's. I know that 4 times 4 is 16, and I know that 16 times 4, what's that? That's 64. And I'm going to have to pause this.